Good evening. Welcome to both of you. Now, the King hasn't seen his grandchildren in person for 4 years. It now looks like a planned reunion that was on the cards for next week won't be happening. Prince Harry had intended to travel with Meghan and their children Archie and Lilibet to an event marking 1 year until the Invictus Games in Birmingham. Zoe and Henry, are you surprised, disappointed?
Well, I'm not surprised. I think Harry makes the valid point that the risk follows the person rather than the role. And I think what is a shame is this operational decision has overshadowed what could have been quite a nice family reunion.
Henry?
I don't understand why he can't get the same protection that he's getting in Birmingham. He can just transplant it to London. There must be a compromise available here.
OK, well, the Sky News understands the decision is down to concerns from the Duke's security team. Harry's had a long-running dispute with the Home Office over whether he and his family should have police protection when they visit the UK. Molly Malone reports from Buckingham Palace.
The last time Harry and Meghan were in the UK together with their 2 children was during the late Queen's Jubilee celebrations in 2022. Since then, rows about his family's security have continued to dominate. And now the news that Meghan, Archie and Lilibet won't join him on his trip to London, amid concerns about their safety.
Because he isn't a working role, so he's not in the public, in a working environment, they decided that he doesn't meet the criteria or the risk to receive police protection. You cannot just go to the Home Office or police and say, I've got thousands of pounds, I want police protection. It doesn't work like that. You cannot buy it as a private individual.
This was a trip that was talked about as a big reunion. The first time that the King would see 2 of his grandchildren in over 4 years. But now we understand that Meghan, Lilibet and Archie won't be joining Harry on his trip to London. A decision driven by concerns from the Duke's security team.
Harry's coming to the UK on a trip to mark the 1-year countdown to the Invictus Games in Birmingham. But he's set to spend time in London too, with an expected ruling on his legal action against the publisher of the Mail newspaper. Having stopped being a working royal in 2020, he's since lost a legal battle with the government, with his security downgraded, while a review looking at the latest risks and threats facing his family has been delayed, amid reports that his requests for police protection for this trip were denied.
I'm confused by the lack of security. I don't understand why we can't offer that kind of protection to the son of the King and to the grandchildren of the King, a man who fought for his country and by his own reckoning killed 25 Taliban fighters. I don't understand why for a matter of 4 or 5 days we can't offer them protection that was offered to Taylor Swift, for example, when she came over to do a concert and there have been threats against her life. So I'm kind of with Harry on this.
What's not clear is whether Meghan and the children will join him at any point in this trip, perhaps in other parts of the UK, or even stay at a royal residence outside of London. What is clear is that there's little sign of this protracted battle over his protection slowing or stopping anytime soon. Molly Malone, Sky News at Buckingham Palace.
I mean, we're led to believe that the security concerns are coming from his own protection team, that they're simply not satisfied, that they will be safe, particularly his children and wife.
Yeah, and that's horrendous, really, isn't it? You know, this is a man who is well known to the country. And as you say, he's got a history of service to the country. He is the son of the King. He was a working royal. And he has been, and his family have been the victims of many threats over the years and a lot of scrutiny. And I think when you put all those things together, I think the argument for security detail is pretty strong. What I'd also say is what the potential cost of having them come here, having not provided security, and then something happening to them, to the country, to his family, I think that's enormous as well. And I'm surprised that wasn't taken into account and didn't overweigh all the other factors that went into deciding the outcome of this case.
You'd imagine that the people he has around him are probably special forces, ex-military, ex-police. They'll have access to a range of sources. They'll be able to assess the threat level to a point. But beyond that, they're going to need the kind of information that only the Met Police or counter-terrorism will have, and that's why they're not satisfied. And as Jenny Borton said, if Taylor Swift was offered RAVEC, I think it's a Royal and VIP Executive Committee, a support or a detail when she was here. She's not even British, even though she's the Queen of the Swifties, and I believe you're a Swiftie. Then why not a Prince of the Realm?
Yes, yeah, and that was taxpayer funded.
It was. Oh, it was taxpayer funded. Okay, well, I mean, and that is the thing. You know, when you talk about, obviously this has been political, you know, in many ways. The conversation around Harry, where he stands in the country's kind of psyche in the national conversation, people have strong feelings about Harry and Meghan. But when you just strip away the facts, and what you have here is a man who clearly has been under threat, his family have, there are clear risks that I think most people can see, and you can see that there are other case studies of people who aren't necessarily working roles who have been provided this. I think the argument is quite strong. So I can understand the disappointment, and I think just on a human level, you can completely understand why he would then make that very human fatherly decision to say, actually, I'm not going to bring my children and I'm not going to bring my wife.
You get the impression that somebody in the establishment, whether it's a RAVEC, whether it's in Buckingham Palace or in Downing Street or the Home Office, has said, we're not bending the knee to this guy. He's not a royal anymore. He can't be half in, half out, and we'll show him how things run in this country. And that's why they're sticking to this line.
But it isn't the King's decision about his son's security. Apparently, he's not involved.
He may not be. He may be at arm's length, plausible deniability, but I'm sure His Majesty, His Royal Majesty, will have a view.
But I mean, it's not as if he's not welcoming him to the UK, because he's afforded him a stay at an unnamed official royal residence.
Somewhere he doesn't want to live, Buckingham Palace, perhaps. Somewhere here.
Yes, they're not going to live in Buckingham Palace, the King and Queen.
So, yeah.
But yeah, so it's not as if he's not welcomed by his father, because I think many people are thinking because of the rift, you know, his dad's behind this.
Yeah,
I don't think that is the case.
I mean, I know, and you know, but I think Henry makes a good point that even if it isn't the case that the King has anything to do with this, and it's, you know, it's totally independent, and it should be, because it's a separate decision. The optics of it, you know, that Harry is coming back after this long, very public estrangement, and it's been highly politicised, and people have very strong views of it, and we know the King's feelings, and we know Harry and Meghan's feelings, and that particular part of the rift, to then be denied the security. I think people are going to be saying, but that's the King of England. Surely there's something he can do. And the fact that maybe there actually isn't anything he can do, it's still going to get tongues wagging.
Yeah, and there is an
elephant in the room. His grandchildren.
Yes.
Yeah, grandchildren.
Of course, there is an elephant in the room we haven't mentioned, Prince William. He will also have a view, and we know that the two brothers are not on speaking terms, and at one point they got to fisticuffs. And I'm sure that William will be making his point of view very, very clear to both the King and to others. So even if the father, who is now, 78 years old, and has talked about this rift not lasting, because of course, you know, one doesn't know how long one is going to live. At the same time, you know, the Prince of Wales still feels sore, according to what the royal correspondence tells us, and he's not going to want to kowtow or to yield to Harry in this way.
We read that Prince Harry's security detail are still looking at how they might make this viable for his family to be in London, and they potentially could still be outside London, in Birmingham, for the 1 year to the Invictus Games. Yeah,
I mean, there might be a solution, and part of this kind of conversation we're having tonight might be that actually there are a lot of people with the power scrabbling around in the background trying to figure out how they can make this work, because it would terribly overshadow what is going to be a very public reconciliation, essentially, if Harry can't bring his wife and his children with him.
Yeah, we shall see. We shall see.
4 years. 4 years since a grandfather has hugged his grandchildren. And when the chance finally came to fix that, when Harry was set to fly into London for a moment that should have been pure, uncomplicated human, the institution found a way to ruin it. Again. Today, we're breaking down one of the most infuriating stories to come out of Britain in months. Prince Harry has been denied police protection for his upcoming UK visit, and as a direct result, Meghan, Archie and Lilibet will not be joining him. Let that sink in. A father is walking into his own country without his wife and children, not because he chose it, but because the system built to protect the royal family couldn't find room to protect an actual family. Let's get into it. Here's the situation as it stands. Harry is expected in the UK for events tied to the one-year countdown to the Invictus Games in Birmingham, a cause that has literally saved lives, built entirely on his own initiative, requiring zero help from the firm. While he's over, he's also expected in London, where a ruling in his long legal fight against a tabloid publisher is on the horizon. This was supposed to double as something else too. The first time King Charles would see two of his grandchildren face to face in over 4 years. Instead, we're told that Harry's own security team, made up of experienced protection professionals, not amateurs, have assessed the risk to Meghan and the children and concluded that travelling to London right now is not something they can sign off on. Not because they're being dramatic, because the family has been denied the level of official protection that would make it safe. Read that again. It's not that Harry didn't ask. It's not that money wasn't offered. He offered publicly to pay for the protection himself. Denied. Because apparently in this country you cannot simply purchase safety for the son of the king and his grandchildren, even when you're begging to foot the bill. Now here's where it gets particularly rich, and where the panel discussion doing the rounds this week accidentally stumbled onto the real story. During a panel on this exact topic, one commentator pointed out something that should be a 5-alarm fire for anyone paying attention. Taylor Swift, global superstar, yes, but not a member of the British royal family, not a citizen of this country, was given a taxpayer-funded protective detail during her time in the UK due to credible threats against her. Nobody blinked. Nobody debated it for months. It happened because the threat was real, and someone in a position of authority decided a human life mattered more than red tape. Now compare that to Harry, a man who served his country in combat, a working royal for the better part of 3 decades, a member of the actual royal family whose wife and children have received documented, verified threats for years. And the answer from the system is, sorry, doesn't meet criteria. Explain that logic to us, because we can't. And let's talk about the other elephant in this entire conversation. Prince Andrew. A man stripped of his royal duties, a man whose name is inseparably linked to Jeffrey Epstein, and the accusations that have followed him for years, still reportedly receives a level of protection that Harry, a working father, a war veteran, a man building charitable legacies from scratch, cannot get for his own children. If that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about what's actually happening behind palace walls, nothing will. Now, predictably, the palace apologists and the more diplomatic voices on these panels want you to believe this has absolutely nothing to do with King Charles. The official line is that this is purely a RAVEC decision. That's the Royal and VIP Executive Committee, the technical body that assesses protection needs. Tamasos Kening Zutanang is supposedly at arm's length, uninvolved, hands clean. Convenient, isn't it? Because here's the thing squaddies already know. The people who sit on these committees don't operate in a vacuum. They have relationships. They have loyalties. And when insiders and royal correspondents are willing to go on air and say, off the record, that the vibe from certain corners of the establishment is, we're not bending the knee to this guy, you start to understand that plausible deniability is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence. Let's be blunt. Harry stepped back from royal duties in 2020. He didn't ask to keep every privilege of a working royal. He asked for the one thing that isn't a privilege. It's a basic safety requirement, especially once you've been that publicly identified as a terror target with documented plots against your life. He even suggested reasonable compromises. He offered to transplant the exact same security arrangement being used for the Birmingham leg of the trip straight into London. simple, solvable, and still no. And then there's William. Nobody wants to say it outright on television, but everybody in that Sky News panel was tiptoeing around the obvious subtext. The brothers are not speaking. Tensions reportedly boiled over into a physical altercation at one point, and William, who will one day control every one of these institutions, is not exactly rushing to smooth the path for his brother's return. So ask yourself who benefits from Harry looking as isolated and unwelcome as possible during this trip. Ask yourself who benefits from the narrative that Meghan and the kids are simply unable to come, rather than actively blocked by an institution that has spent years demonstrating exactly how it feels about the Sussexes. This is not paranoia. This is pattern recognition. We've watched this play out again and again. A decision gets made that just happens to disadvantage Harry and Meghan, and then a chorus of, "Well, actually it's not personal," follows right behind it. Here's what's almost funny about all of this, in a bleak sort of way. The panel discussing this story kept coming back to one phrase. The optics are bad. No kidding. Of course the optics are bad. You have an aging king who has publicly acknowledged his own mortality, who has spoken about wanting to resolve this family rift while there's still time, and the one mechanism that could deliver an actual reunion with his grandchildren has been quietly strangled by a security review that conveniently never seems to move at normal speed. Instead of resolving this quietly and compassionately behind the scenes, the institution has once again let this spill into the public conversation in the worst possible way, forcing commentators, viewers, and yes, us, to spend our time asking why a father has to choose between seeing his own dad and keeping his children safe. And let's not forget the deeper context that never gets mentioned enough on these panels. This is a family that has already lost one member to a total catastrophic failure of protection. The lessons of Diana's death should have made security for her son and grandchildren an automatic, non-negotiable priority, not something up for review, debate, or bureaucratic delay. That omission alone should embarrass every single person involved in this decision. So, where does this leave us? As of now, Harry is still expected to travel, likely staying at one of the royal residences rather than any London base of his own. Because, of course, Buckingham Palace was never going to be home for him again. Meghan, Archie and Lilibet are expected to stay behind, though there are murmurs that arrangements for parts of the trip, possibly around Birmingham, could still be worked out if the security situation shifts. But make no mistake, even if a partial solution gets cobbled together at the last minute, the damage is already done. The world is once again watching the British monarchy fumble a moment that should have been simple. A grandfather seeing his grandchildren. Because pride, politics and institutional ego got in the way of basic decency. This is exactly the kind of story that shows you everything about how this institution really operates behind the palace gates. Not through official statements, not through polished press releases, but through the small, quiet decisions that just so happen to keep punishing the two people who dared to walk away. If you're as fed up with this as we are, let us know in the comments. Do you think this decision ever comes back to the King's desk, or is arm's length just another phrase for looking the other way? And if you want more videos like this, breaking down exactly what the tabloids and the institution don't want you thinking too hard about, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we're not going anywhere. Squaddies, until next time, stay loud, stay informed, and keep asking the questions they don't want asked.